Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. Today we have a really great guest, and we're going to discuss something a little bit different. But before we get into it today, I want to talk about the Promote, Profit, Publish quiz. For those of you who are not sure if your platform is built right, if you're contacting your consumers in the correct way, if you even know who your consumer is and maybe you're struggling a little bit, I invite you to go over and take this quiz and find out where your skill set really is. You can find it at www.promoteprofitpublishquiz.com. So today's guest, we're going to do something a little different today. Most of the time we talk about speaking and coaching and things like that. But now we're hiring in like the next generation of the workforce. And I'm hearing from a lot of you that you're struggling a lot with this. So today we have Ben Baker on, and he's the Chief Storyteller at Your Brand Marketing. And he works with clients to help them retain and grow their Millennial Rockstar employees. Ben is the author of Powerful Personal Brands, a hands-on guide to understanding yours. And he's the host of iHeartRadio's syndicated Living Your Brand Live show and the chief facilitator at Lead Any Level Workshop series. Storytelling has always been a way of life for Ben. I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? What kind of stories were you telling, Ben?
You know what? My mother would tell you, a different story than I will, but that's a different.
Exactly. So I'm a storyteller too. I always used to be the one that could get us out of situations with the cops when I was a teenager. So from a young age, he realized that through storytelling, people listened to him, understood him, and engaged. And professionally, this is what he's been doing now for over 2 decades. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Just a couple of little things, house notes. It's called the Lead at Any Level course, and those are the workshops. And it's also the YourLivingBrand.live show, and it's on iHeartRadio. So, that's the problem with these names, is that they get turned around so quickly that everybody, has a different interpretation. But it's the YourLivingBrand.live show.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
You're welcome.
for doing that. So before we get into the questions about millennials, tell us a little bit about what your mother would say about your storytelling.
Well, that's a different story altogether. What would my mother tell me about the storytelling? From an early age, the stories that I told, I grew up in a really interesting house. I grew up with an entrepreneurial father, and a lot of friends of his were also entrepreneurs. So I got that, ability to tell stories, the ability to engage, the ability to sell from a very early age. I don't know if everybody remembers the Tommy Vu of the 1980s. For people that were that, you too can make $1 million with no money down. It was, he had houses and cars and good-looking girls on both arms. Well, Tommy Vu made no money in the real estate industry, as far as I know. He made all of his money in the seminar game. 2 of his best pitchmen, the guys that came to your city and got you to take the $10,000 course. These are the guys that packed you in for free for the half-day webinar or the half-day seminar those days. Got you all excited, got you to sign for the $10,000 course. Well, those were 2 of my dad's best friends. So those are the people from the time I was 8 or 9 years old. I was hanging around and I was learning from them that you always need to have a story in your back pocket. You always need to have just that one more story that you can tell and illustrate a point and be able to, get people on your side, because if you tell them a story, there's a hook there. There's something that's going to engage. And, that's where I started. So my mother would say, "You're telling stories again." And I would go, "Yep, I absolutely am." And, and you know what? When you're 8 or 9 years old, the stories might have been fabricated. They might have been stretched a little bit. You didn't know it, better, that you weren't supposed to stretch and fabricate them. But as you get older, those stories get tighter and they become more authentic and they become more real. And they, you have the tapestry to be able to tell more and more stories that are authentic to your life. And that's where my book comes in. Is it's a set of stories. It's the lessons that I learned from them, and pokes and prods for people to sit there and say, how do you build your own personal brand?
Very good. Very good. So we're actually going to talk about the millennial and actually the other generations
These
around
Gen
them
Zs.
workforce today, because so many people, so many companies are really struggling with how do I retain these employees? So why is this age group so misunderstood?
Well, the first thing I want to ask every single person that is either a Gen X or a boomer or whoever, think back to the point in time when you were 16, 17, 18 years old. We all knew everything. We were all impetuous. We were all, we were excited to start our lives. We couldn't wait to get going. And we always thought the generation above us knew nothing, and that we knew better and that was it. So what you're seeing from the millennial and the Gen X generation, and guess what? The generation after them is the same thing that happened to us. It's the same thing that happened to our parents. It's the same thing that happened to our grandparents. The guys in the zoot suits were seen as young and impetuous and rabble rousers. But those people now that are in their 80s and 90s years old look back to that point in time and says, "Oh, look how wonderful I was." You know what? With age, we all forget how impetuous our time was of our youth and how we wanted everything now, that we wanted everything better. But the problem is with social media today is that everything is amplified. So when these people look at their feeds and, it's the algorithms of any social media platform. I don't care if you're on Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. The algorithms say, whatever you look at, whatever you're paying attention to, whatever you're reading, we're going to give you more of it. Mm-hmm. So if all of a sudden you're looking at feeds of people that are 30 under 30, that are young, they're successful, that are vice presidents of their company, are making $500,000 a year, whatever, that's what you're going to start seeing showing up in your feed. And it gives people a huge inferiority complex. People sit there and say, "Oh my God, why them and not us? I've got my MBA, they've got their MBA. I went to this school, they went to this school. How come they're making so much money, more money than I am? How come they got that promotion and I didn't? How come?" And everybody sit there going, "Why them and not me?" And because of that, people start sitting there going, "I'm 25 years old. If I'm not the vice president of whatever, if I'm not making X amount of dollars, if I don't have this car, if I don't have this house, I'm a failure." And they're not. They're 25 years old. And they have their entire life ahead of them. And it's a matter of getting people to understand, both from their manager's point of view, that these are the thoughts that are going through their heads, and also getting that generation, whether it's the millennials or the Gen X's behind them, to understand that what they're seeing is 1% of reality, if what they're seeing is reality at all. Mm-hmm. So it's that whole challenge of getting the generations to understand what's going on in the background, what's the context, what's the pressures that are being put on everybody. And that's why people are sitting there going, "Well, if I'm not going to move ahead today, I'm going to go look for somewhere else where I can get that, where I can get that satisfaction." They're always looking for that instant satisfaction based on the fact that they don't feel like they're being communicated to. They don't feel like they're being listened to. They don't feel like they're being engaged. They don't feel that they understand how they are part of the process. And if we can understand that with this generation and be able to help them understand that, yes, you are valuable. Yes, there is a path to your success. Yes, there is ways that you are going to succeed within this company, and show them how to get there and communicate effectively on going what the path is and why their little part matters within the big corporation. Nobody wants to be out there with a resume in their hand. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to be out there looking for job to job to job to job to job. Nobody wants that. And if we can help this generation understand, their purpose, their brand, and their values are being met, we can keep them, and we don't have to watch them go out the door.
So I'm going to ask you something that probably will be very debatable for people, but when you say that social media amplifies what's going on, you and I are probably from the same generation. Don't you feel like it also amplifies and extends the idealism that's out there? Because I think for most people our age, we got out of college, we had our idealism, we got into the real world, and we said, oh my God, this is reality, and we changed our tune. I don't see a lot of that happening with these kids. What do you think that's all about?
Well, I mean, you look at the idealism, and is that idealism being amplified? Yes. I mean, in the same way that they're seeing, the successes fall into their feed. If they believe in social consciousness, if they believe that, in people, purpose, and then profit, which a lot of companies are going to this, triple bottom line idea, it makes nothing but sense. There's a question of the way that we did it in the 1980s is not the way that we should be doing it moving forward. And, in a lot of cases, they're right. I mean, I'm a big believer of not every business needs to be a unicorn. Not every business needs to scale. Not every business needs to have profit and, be sitting there waiting, 2 years out for that $100 million buyout from Google. The percentages of those businesses that actually make that happen are so infinitesimally small compared to the number of businesses out there. Mm-hmm. It's almost a rounding error. But if we sit there and say, okay, how are we going to grow this business organically and build it out? The new generation of business owners hopefully are taking that idealism and turning it into people first, purpose second, and then profit third. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a different thought process. It's questioning of, is the old way the best way? And there's lots of things from the way that business has gone over the number of years that are been very successful, and that there's value to them that they need to learn and not negate them and throw them in the garbage. But there's also new idealistic values that can be married with that can make business better, because you have a whole generation of kids that watched their parents a generation ago be wiped out. Mm-hmm. That all of a sudden you had this whole thing where all of a sudden layoffs were happening 15,000 at a time, or 5,000 at a time, or 500 at a time at office. And these companies, had no relationship with their employees. They were numbers. They were numbers on a spreadsheet and said, you know what, we need to let 500 people go in order to make profit happen. So 500 people got, their jobs got eliminated. And these kids watched their parents go through this, and they watched their parents struggle for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years until they could find a new job and, get back on their feet. And they're realizing that, they don't want to be, sitting there with their hat in their hand and, having to, work 24/7, 365 for a paycheck, only for that paycheck to be taken away from them. So, there's a different thought process. And that's where that idealism, and I hope they do hold on to that idealism, and we can make some changes, because we need to be more human as businesses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So millennials have a reputation of being really short-term employees, which is a lot of times why people don't want to hire them, because they don't understand the training. And as an entrepreneur, you have time, money put into them as in the training process. How do we overcome that?
Well, I think we need to take a look at, first of all, about how we onboard employees, because I would say the majority of companies out there onboard people terribly. They absolutely do a horrible job at onboarding. Here's your desk, here's your computer, here's your business cards. Come and see me if you have a problem. And that's your onboarding process. And I over exaggerate, but in a lot of cases, that's what it really is. There's no installation of the culture. There's no, making sure that you're walking this person physically into different people's offices and introducing them and enabling those conversations with the CEO, the CFO, the operations department, touring them through the facility to make sure they understand that how the business actually works. Giving them a mentor for the first 3 months of that they're in the company, of somebody that they can actually go back and ask questions to, and have somebody that's going to introduce them to other employees within the company. None of that is done anymore. When I first started 30 years ago in sales, for the first 6 months that I was on the job with Xerox, I had a guy that was 20 years older than I am that got paid an override for every penny that I made. And his job was to bring me into the culture and to teach me, not only the technology and that, but what the actual culture of the company and how we engage with clients, how we engage with other departments, who your best friends were, how you got new leads, what are the different ways to be successful. And that doesn't happen anymore. And because of that, the employees are sitting there going, well, they walk in the door with one foot out the door because they're sitting there going, am I really truly valued? How do I fit into this company? What's my purpose? How does what I do, excuse me, how does what I do help this company grow? What is the vision of this company? What is the mission? What are they aiming for? Who are their customers? Why do their customers like them? And if you don't have any of this information, you feel like you're doing your job in a vacuum. And when you feel like you're doing your job in a vacuum, you don't feel like there's anywhere for you to grow. You don't feel like you have any purpose. You don't feel that your job matters. And therefore you go looking for somewhere else it does. But the problem is when you go to somewhere else it does, 9 months later, you're going to find out you're going to see the same thing somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But they don't realize that because everybody, the grass is always greener. The grass isn't always greener. It's just a different shade of green. And that's really what it is. So when we can work as companies to be able to engage our employees in a meaningful way, in a way that's relevant to them, they're going to want to stick around. Nobody, like I said earlier, nobody wants to have their resume in their hand.
Right.
Nobody wants to be out there, looking for a new job. It's a demeaning and it's a scary, proposition. Uh-huh. So why, if we could help these employees, stay loyal and give them a sense of purpose, they'll stay.
Cool. All right. So what are the biggest issues you see over and over with these companies? Because, like the bigger companies, they have shareholders they have to answer to. How do you fix those problems and keep shareholders happy at the same time?
And that's that. I mean, and quite honestly, that is the trick of the situation is to have the companies believe in people first. People first companies has to come from the board of directors down. It has to come from the CEO, the board of directors down, and it has to be the belief of if we take care of our people and we explain our purpose, the profits will come. And be able to stick by that and sit there and say, you know what, we may have had 2 bad quarters, but it's important for us to realize that our people are our biggest asset. And, and that's challenging. That's really challenging when you have, stock, that's fluctuating up and down, that you have major stockholders that are taking you out for lunch going, so what's happening this quarter? Why are we down, or what's going on, or why are you losing money in this particular part of your business? And it's a matter of sitting there going, okay, what is the vision, the value, and the purpose of the company? And how do you move forward? And you know what? I can't change the world. And, and I talk to CEOs and they say, well, you got to help me engage my people better. You got to help me, retain our people better. I'm going, well, it's got to start at the top. Mm-hmm. If there isn't a belief from the executive suite all the way down, and if it isn't lived, never mind spoken, whatever you say doesn't matter if you don't live it.
Oh, that is so true. I was brought in to build a company last year, and the CEO just wasn't changing.
Yeah.
And it trickled down to everybody else. And I had to get to the point where I said, I can't, unless the top changes, we can't change this company. So I think that's exactly true in that sense. So why is everybody so fixated on personal branding these days?
I think a personal brand, everybody's got a brand. I mean, I've done a video out there, and the brand is everybody's got a personal brand, whether you know it or not. And your brand is, first of all, for people that don't understand it, a brand is not a logo. It's not a color scheme. It's not a font. It's, Jeff Bezos says it best. I quote this time and time again. It's how people think of you when you're not in the room. Mm-hmm. And that's the question I tell everybody I deal with, including my own 16-year-old son. How do you want people to think about you when you're not in the room? When people are sitting around having a drink, at your funeral, what do you want people to be thinking about you? And those are the things that people need to be thinking about. And that's your personal brand. And your brand enables you to build trust.
Mm-hmm.
If people don't trust you, they won't do business with you. And your brand says, I'm trustworthy, I'm reliable, I'm a fun individual, I do what I say and I say what I do. There's a million things that your brand can be or not is, but people have to sit there and say, okay, this person, I know that this is what they're going to do. And they're going to do it all the time because this is what they say all the time. And this is what they do all the time. And those are, whether it's on their social media platforms, whether it's in person, on the phone, emails, on their website, at a trade show, whatever, wherever I engage with this person, that's who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you look at somebody that's the epitome of this, from what I see on the outside, I've never been to dinner with Gary Vaynerchuk, but Gary Vaynerchuk, no matter where he is or how he is, that's Gary. I've seen him live on stage. I've seen him at exhibitions. I've seen wherever I see him live or on social media, whatever, that's who he is. And if you don't like him, okay, that's life. You don't like him, that he's okay with that. You can't be friends with everybody. You can't appease 7.5 billion people. So you need to understand my brand is for these people. These are the people that I can help. These are the people I can influence. These are the people that I truly can add value to. And those are the people that you communicate that value to. And that's how you build your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care if you're CEO of a company, a mid-level manager, a salesperson, a marketing exec, even somebody in operations, whatever. My UPS delivery driver has the greatest personal brand ever. He is, he jumps out of his truck. He's a bundle of energy. If he's 5 feet tall, I doubt it. He might be 4'10", but he is just an absolute bundle of energy. And he loves his job, and he is my view of UPS. And he's a reason why I give UPS the lion's share of my business, because when I look at my FedEx driver, my UPS driver, the UPS guy, hi Ben, how you doing? No problem. Oh, no problem. You're not ready quite yet. Tell you what, I'll do a couple do a couple more deliveries, and I'll come back and I'll pick that stuff up. No problem. Don't worry about it. If I give you half an hour, does that work for you? And he's great. My FedEx guy, if the stuff's not ready, he just drives away.
Mm-hmm.
And those are their personal brands, and they both reflect on the company that they work for.
And that's such a good point, because this is something we talk about all the time is your brand is not what you think it is. It's what everyone else thinks it is. And we see so many coaches who are, I want to make an impact. I'm here to serve. But they don't want to be connected to their audience. They act like they're too good for their audience, and they don't understand that people see that.
Yeah.
They feel, even if it's not, the thinking of, oh my gosh, she wants to be connected to me, but she just blew me off. They may not physically, like in their brain, think it, but there's some subconscious stuff going on there that is, something feels out of alignment here. And whenever you have that sort of confusion going on in your subconscious, people don't buy. So it's very important for people to perceive your brand as what you think it is, as well, and be in alignment with that.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story, and I'll protect the names to protect the guilty on this one.
Is this like Dragnet?
This is like Dragnet. This is going back 5 or 6 years ago, and I was working on the executive committee of a conference, and we wanted this fairly well-known person to speak at the conference. They didn't have time to speak at the conference, but they said, tell you what, we'll come in. If you fly me in, I'll videotape my session and you can play it during the thing, but that's what I have to do. We went, no problem. So we flew them in and we said, look, can we invite a bunch of VIPs to lunch to be, to have lunch with you afterwards? And they negotiated a deal to make sure that this happened. And the answer was yes. And he did it. Well, when he was on camera, he was absolutely charming. He was engaging. He was one of the most incredible people as you want. As soon as the camera went off and we went into the room to shake hands and have lunch, He was looking at his watch and couldn't wait to get out of the room to be able to get in his cab and head to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't sign any books. He didn't ask anybody about, themselves. He was not engaging with anybody. And it totally blew my opinion of him. Totally and absolutely blew, because I'm sitting there going, okay, you're one person when the camera's on and you're a completely different person when the camera's off.
Mm-hmm.
And, people just have told me, it says, well, he's coming to town. Do you want to go see him? And I went, no,
Yeah.
I really don't. And
Yeah.
this is why. And 10 of us decide not to go after I told them the story.
Yeah. I've been to events like that where, I can remember this one I went, somebody recommended that I go, and she's standing on stage talking about how she wants to peer into your soul and spending 30 seconds looking deep in your eyes. And then she gets off stage and says, keep everybody away from me. And we could hear her. And it's like, oh my gosh. So,
Yeah.
and that was a 3-day event. I went to one day and I went and played the rest of the time. I was like, yeah, it's not my people. So, what's your process to help companies retain and grow their rockstar employees?
It's a multi-step process, and it goes in from consulting into the workshops, and it really comes down to we work with business to business companies in the 50 to 500 people range. That's the game that we sit. That's the pocket that we sit in. And the first thing we do is we work them through an engagement survey. We have an online survey that's 91 questions, that is mobile friendly, that their employees can take from wherever they are. And what it doesn't do is it doesn't ask you a question. It asks you 2 questions simultaneously. And there's a sliding bar of between these, which do you think is more relevant and and to what percentage? So it's not only just sitting there going, okay, do you believe this? Yes or no. It's to what degree do you believe this? And what degree do you believe in this based on these 2 polar opposite, viewpoints? And it really gives a really good viewpoint of, where people are within their work group, their division, their company, and it goes through all different levels to be able to sit there and say, what's the level of engagement? Why do people care about the company? Do they like the company that they're working for? Do they believe in the company they work for? Is there a problem with this particular manager? Or is it more of an organizational problem? So it helps us pinpoint a lot of where it is. From there, we'll go in and we'll discuss that with the senior management team. And then we, over a series of days, and depending on the size of the organization, we'll bring in a graphic recorder and we'll do 2 to 4 hour sessions with various departments. And we'll run them through a series of 10, 15 questions to be able to sit there and say, okay, what do how do you feel, and what is your engagement within the company? How important do you think the company is to you? And what is your belief in the mission vision of the company? And we'll have the graphic recorder working with them, and so we have a visual representation of it. From there, we can take that and say, okay, to these 10 questions, this is what ops said, this is what marketing said, this is what sales said, this is what finance said, whatever. And be able to put them all up side by side and be able to show, senior management where the gaps are. And from there, we develop a series of workshops to be able to help with internal communication. So it's that. And then we have, ongoing needs assessment, ongoing, relationship building. If the teams need me to come back in or do an online discussion with them on a regular basis to be able to work through specific issues, we'll do that. Because my attitude is it can't just be one and done. You can't run somebody through a two-day workshop and then expect the world to change for them. It's a 2-day workshop. And here's a bunch of exercises for you to work on long term. And by the way, I'm available, as questions come up. So it's a multi-step process that we work with people on to be able to help them, understand, first of all, where they are, understand where they want to go, and then we build the bridge to help organizations get there. And there's no box. There's no cookie cutter. It's, here's the process, but once we understand what your challenge are, where the holes are in your dike, let's help you fix your holes, not just specific holes. let's understand what the problems are within your organization and help you fix the problems that are, that are specific to you.
No, that's really great. And it's building a muscle. You don't change overnight. It's just like working out. You have to work up to a certain level.
Exactly.
So Ben, where can we find you if we want to know more about how you work with millennials?
Yeah, no problem. You can find me. The best way to get in touch with me is always through my website, and it's yourbrandmarketing.com. Yourbrandmarketing.com. You can find me on LinkedIn on Your Brand Marketing. You can find me on Twitter on Your Brand Marketing. You can find me on Facebook on Your Brand Marketing. You can find me on YouTube on Getting You Noticed. But everything comes through my website, and it's yourbrandmarketing.com. And you can book a 30-minute live Zoom call with me for free. We can discuss your particular needs and figure out how we can work together. I'm always willing to jump on a Zoom chat with somebody, understand what their specific issues first, and then understand how we can move forward.
Great. Thank you so much for being on today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.